They made sure there were machine guns up on the roof of the White House. The Secret Service and the Treasury Department, which ran the Secret Service, made recommendations such as that the White House could be painted a dark color, that the skylights of the White House would be painted black, that there would no longer be fires burning in the White House fireplaces so that the smoke would not attract German airplanes. Not that there were any German airplanes that had the range to get across the Atlantic and cause these problems, but they thought of everything. Mike Riley, however, was worried about the single lone assassin, like the man who took a shot at Roosevelt in 1932 in a crowd, raised his pistol, fired 5 shots from a .32 Webley revolver, and if not for a woman who was standing right next to this guy, about 100 yards away from FDR, who pushed the shooter's hand up, Roosevelt might have been killed right there. The mayor of Chicago, who was shaking hands with Roosevelt at that moment, was killed. He died basically in Roosevelt's arms. This happened in Miami, and so there was a precedent for people taking a shot at Franklin Roosevelt, and there certainly was a precedent for the Secret Service worrying about the potential of this kind of thing happening. And once I read that book, I knew that I had something that I could go forward with. And it's filled, of course, with lots of fantastic details. In this book, you will encounter something called the Al-Noor door. It's very hard to find any other references to an Al-Noor door. It must have been produced by a company called Al-Noor, and it was a large metal detector, one of the earliest forms of metal detector. And on Christmas Eve, this Secret Service, to make sure that nobody got anything metal onto the south lawn of the White House, put Al-Noor doors at both entrances that they were using to allow the public onto the south lawn. That all becomes part of the plot, and it all came straight out of my reading of Riley of the White House. But once you have those ideas, once you know what you're going to, how you're going to tell the story, the next question is, where do I begin it? You know, David Mamet has always said that the 2 questions you should ask at the beginning of any novel are, or any story, are why here and why now? And the now, of course, is that on December 8th, when this book begins, the world is in shock. And let's just begin with the international dateline. It's December 8th. Stop in Tokyo for a minute. In Tokyo, you find the emperor receiving the head of his foreign services, who presents him with a sheet of paper. It says, "This, which suspends relations with the United States, will be handed to the United States Secretary of State in 30 minutes. In 90 minutes, the bombing will begin. Pearl Harbor will be bombed." And that's December 8th in Tokyo. Keep traveling around the globe. You will come eventually to the Eastern Front. That's known to Europeans, but to the Russians it is the Western Front. And they and the Germans are engaged in a death struggle in the snow and the ice, just to the west of Moscow. Keep going to the Wolfschans, which is in East Prussia. It's Hitler's depressing headquarters deep in the pine forest of East Prussia. And on the night of December 7th, it's a very gloomy place because the German advance has been blunted. A week earlier, Hitler got reports of the fact that the Wehrmacht forward detachments were within sight of Moscow, 12 miles from Moscow. He spoke of a victory parade. And then the Russians launched a massive counterattack, which was still going on. And everyone in the Wolfschans sat depressed, unhappy, until news arrived of Pearl Harbor. And suddenly Hitler's mood just changed completely. He exulted and announced, "Now we cannot lose. for now we have an ally who has not been defeated in 3,000 years. Hitler even then was developing tremendous skill for self-deception. Keep rolling further to the west and come to London. In London, on the night of December 7th, Winston Churchill is at not in London, but out in the countryside. Winston Churchill is at Chequers, the country retreat of the Prime Minister, and he's sitting in conversation, telling a story, holding court at the table. His butler gets the word and comes over to Churchill, tries to interrupt the conversation. No, let me finish. Mr. Prime Minister, no, what is it? And then the butler whispers in his ear that Pearl Harbor has been bombed. Immediately Churchill jumps up, runs upstairs, calls FDR on the Atlantic line and says, "What's all this I hear about Pearl Harbor?" To which Roosevelt responds, "It's all true. We are all in the same boat now." And as Churchill would write later, "I went to bed that night contemplating the industrial and military might of the United States, and I slept the sleep of the saved and thankful." And the next day, when he got up on December 8th, he ordered that the Parliament be gathered to declare war on Japan. Come in, sit down, you can stand back there. To declare war on Japan. Hitler, of course, had also ordered on the morning of December 8th that Goebbels gather the Reichstag and have them ready and waiting for him to give a speech of great importance when he got back to Berlin. And everybody wondered, what is Hitler going to talk about when he gets back to Berlin? But let's let the camera keep traveling to the United States. By the way, in writing a scene that I eventually cut out of the book, I learned that the first place to see the sun in the United States on December 7th is Bar Harbor, Maine. Just a small detail. The camera keeps traveling. We land in Washington, D.C. It's a misty, chilly day in Washington, D.C., and we meet Franklin Roosevelt sitting up in bed, holding the speech. His butler, Alonzo Fields, comes in with a morning coat, striped trousers. FDR is going to go in formal wear to give the speech that he's going to give at noon, perhaps the most important speech of his life. And he's sitting there, and he's making edits on the speech. And he makes one edit that might be the most famous edit in the history of edits, as he scratches out the words in world history and inserts the words in infamy. That's right. He made that. They had written the draft the night before. It had been typed up for him, and at the FDR library, where you can be sure we spent some time back a couple of summers ago, in the FDR library, you can see the speech. It's pretty impressive. Now, FDR got into his limousine about 11:30 that morning. It's believed that he was riding in a car that day that had once been the wheels of none other than Al Capone. And it was heavily armored and very safe. They were making a couple of cars for FDR, limousines that would replace Al Capone's car, but they needed this one right now. He got in the car. The Secret Service lined the running boards. Even though it was a chilly day, they rode on the running boards in nothing but sport coats. Why was that? If they had to wear the long wool overcoats that were generally worn in December and January in Washington, D.C., they wouldn't be able to respond quickly to any kind of threat. And they feared threats all the way from Pennsylvania Avenue to the United States Capitol.